Hey, Erwin, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning. So, Erwin Enriquez, I lead a sales team for a healthcare company called Outbound Health. So, I've been in this position for about 2 to 3 years now. It's more of a growth business unit of a bigger entity called Omnicell. Out here north of Houston, a town called The Woodlands, Texas. So it's pretty hot right now. So don't visit me right now.
I've been to Houston in the summer, and
it's kind of ungodly, right? We love it, but we still complain about it every time it sells it. So
it's very different than like Dallas. Dallas doesn't get the humidity that Houston gets.
No, I know. Why build a pool? You can use a pool. You're just out there cleaning and wasting all that water, because that's the worst advice I ever got. Hey, move to Houston and build a pool. Well, you can only jump in it like the middle of the night. So, extremely excited to be in your podcast, Brian. I think, I've been in the industry, love the industry. My initial introduction in this industry was actually early in my career as a life insurance agent. So kind of went through life and, did my own business, kind of took a pause, and then went to this enterprise sale for the past 15 years. Been lucky enough to be with the same company and learn through that whole thing, and now leading and guiding the team to what good looks like and trying to find out what's your favorite, the golden nugget. No, it doesn't exist. It's sales.
And what was that transition like, going from individual contributor to leader? Because that can be a hard transition.
Big jump. Actually, the advantage you have is similar almost to your career, Brian, from an engineering standpoint. I see, from my standpoint, there was a lot of advantages of not only individual contributor to a leadership perspective, but also having the operational background, right? Which tends to have given me a lot more tools, a lot more ability to relate to becoming a leader and communicating well to the guys that carry the bag like I did, but have a more impactful relationship based on my further background on the real world. That's what they say.
And what was your motivation to get into leadership? Did you want to see what it was like? Were you burnt out of the draft?
No. I'll be honest. I've always been transparent all my life. It happened, right? I was always that guy that just put my head down and getting things done, and the opportunity came. It was more of a halfway. Hey, there's a role, and there's really no other way except this way, right? Like, you've done this, and that. A little bit of this, the background, Brian, was I was given a task to open a market in Taiwan. Yep. Did extremely well in that one. I was actually flying in and out to Taiwan for a year, learned a lot on. Believe me, I mean, if you have somebody that wants not to do it, it's tough to me, because I literally made those trips, like leave Saturday and come back on Friday. So I know. So when that was extremely successful, and then when I did that, they saw and said, like, hey, if you were able to do that, why don't you do this? Right, lead a team. And
you're able to do that.
Yeah, and I go like, oh yeah, and then big pat on your shoulder, and here's now lead a team. So that's exactly what happened.
And what do you like about it?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think when you're still on a winning edge, you kind of get excited. The challenge, I don't actually really see it much differently from when I was an individual contributor, Brian. And I learned, right? We always learn, especially, under managers that everybody talks around. You remember your sales team that they all talk about your boss. And, oh my God, that infamous boss who loves the Thursday and Friday calls. Forecasting time. 4:30. So I'm pretty much a student of that I took all my lessons from what not to do, and when I transitioned, a lot of guys were even questioning me, right? Hey, now that you're a leader, why not act like a leader? Like, What does that mean? Oh, act like that guy? Not gonna happen, right? Like, so that's been my forte. I think extremely transparent and just leading by example and being there for guys more than telling them what to do, right? Like my goal is to give them full ownership of their business to run, and then I'm there. I'm and the famous thing is, there's a lot of these tools and processes, but you know how that works. But that's why I love your videos, right? I throw that on my boss, like, hey, what's Brian?
He doesn't seem to get it, but he's fine.
No, so I think what I love about this is the impact I'm having with just people, right? And actually that. I'm the relationship guy, so I just seeing things grow, and comes with that is success, right? Like, and I celebrate each step of the process, right? I actually am one of those guys that, I'm not jumping up and down on wins. I celebrate the process because every step, gives us knowledge and teaches everyone, including myself.
And I think a lot of people miss that if you have like the either anti-mentors, that the list of things not to do. That's just as important as the list of things to do. The list of things to do is pretty short.
Yeah.
So the list of things not to do, we've got lots of examples.
Absolutely.
And that was kind of my motivation to get into leadership, because it was like, oh God, that doesn't help. People want this. And how much time do you spend selling inside, trying to get the company to do the things that the market needs versus selling outside, helping the reps, getting the customers and revenue?
I actually still in my mind and part of my activity is still carry the bag in some way. It's extremely difficult. It's not that I'm not entrusting other people to do it, but some are residual from existing relationships and significance. But what I'm learning is, to your question, is how much time I spent there. I should spend more time, because I think right now I'm probably about closer to 40%, having 60% more on the field and the leading teams. But on that 40%, it's not working out so far. It's extremely difficult, right? That's the bigger challenge from a leadership perspective of how to package that whole justification of what needs to happen based on what the market. I feel like that's the next big step for me. The next big step for me is how I can make that part easier. I think there's an easy button to that, but you've seen it, right? In the corporate world, there's a lot of smart people that I'm working with.
And what's the hardest part right now? Is it hiring? Is it transitioning? Is it?
I think right now, some of the podcasts that you have says a lot, right? Like it's just the way business has gone and the way selling in particular has completely changed, right? The dynamics of what was as far as about 5-6 years ago, like even to the point of SDRs now are basing their training on what they've learned 15 years ago and still putting that in here, right? And I think that the way I express it to the guys here, Brian, is, the good old days of these slick sales guys being able to sell things to people that they don't even know what they're buying is all long gone, right? Like, you can just ask Alexa now, right? Information is on your hand. And so the ability to sell actually favors me a lot, because in life insurance, it's always been the personal touch, the human side of the business, right? Think about it, you're selling a life insurance product, right? Yeah, you're talking about extreme stuff, but I think that's the whole challenge right now, is to make people understand, both internally and externally, that value and value propositions of the good old days, it's not going to work right now. There needs to be a lot more human interaction, whatever that looks like, right? Work hard in finding things that makes you differ, not from a transaction basis, but the actual human side of you relating to the product, to the market, to the person. It's more critical.
Now, most leaders are trying to move away from that because they hear it from the VCs say that they want an assembly line, right? Like you're making donuts or cars or TVs or something, and that's not how deals get done. You don't put one thing on, do a demo, poof, deal moves down, give a proposal, deal moves down, negotiate it. It doesn't work that way with people now, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't work with people, it doesn't work with the market either, right? Like if you think about that, right? Like we're dictating something and that affects everyone, right? So, but to your point, right, that's where they forecast every quarter based on step 1, step 2. Hey, here's something for you. Hey, that other sales guy has a 7-step process. What do you have?
It takes 8?
So that's the thing, right? So I love my response to that is always like, hey, it's a complex sales, right? So I mean, I can give you what you want. I want to can provide you what and that extends to a lot of what you said, right? When you're always doing that with your sales team, they're going to end up telling you what you want to hear, right? Like a lot of that is not the truth. So there's no win in that.
That's a big loss. And people don't understand how bad that is.
Show them Brad's video.
Right, because everyone's under this delusion, and then the last day of the quarter, everyone finds out what reality is.
And now suddenly
they don't like it.
Yeah. I think a lot of the internal battle is what I'm trying to absorb. I think my advice and the way I talk with some of my peers and some of my mentors is that you need to learn to absorb a lot of the pain and not transfer that over to your guys, right? Find a way to package it because at the end of the day, all they're looking for are wins, right? How you can manage that and proactively work through that is key. And at the same time, be able to still align with your business goals, but not having to let your guys feel the pain or the burden of having to go through step 1 to 7.
And what do your reps typically come to you with? Not particular product issues or company issues, but sales issues.
Yeah, I mean, right now, Ryan, one of the biggest issues right now that I see in the market is the trend right now is competition, right? That they're and renewals. It's almost like the way the market or the vendors that we're working with is trying to adapt to the inflation issues and trying to get more stable deals, but at the same time knowing that those kind of dynamics are happening, but at the same time trying to reduce costs. How can you ask for reduction in cost, but inflation is rising, cost of employment is rising? So a lot of the things I'm hearing right now is strategy around the new challenges that we're seeing in the market today. And that's where I spend a lot more time with them, that they're coming up to me and saying, hey, this is what I'm hearing. We're pitching to these guys, and the reaction seems to be, hey, what is the longer term strategy or the contract looks like for you guys? And the pricing is more towards that. So, and also from a conversation perspective, right, the value and the way to maneuver or add value or relatable to their own challenges. Now that you're saying, all right, this is what's happening in the market, how is this impacting their business, so we can relate more as we package the whole narrative towards it.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that a manager can really do for a rep is kind of play the client. Have the rep understand how the client is viewing this.
Yeah, very important, right, Ryan? So, yeah, instead of talking about you and your, and I think that humanity part of that, right? Like it's not about, I tell people, it's not about talking about baseball, right? But it's more talking about what matters to them, right? What things is to them. And I think, I don't know if there are some, but you've seen this, right? And the way your podcast is curtailed again, this is not an issue that has happened now, but this has been for years, right? The traditional salespeople, what's being told them, how to execute your job, and then they just follow the path. what bothers me is a lot of them are not learning that's not the way it works.
Right. Well, I think one of the things that's changed is that we don't get the warm inbound that we used to.
Yeah, no.
Right? Because people, they come to the website, or they might even be interested, but they don't really want to convert until they're ready. So then when we do cold outbound, it's cold. They don't know who you are, what you do, why they need it, and they don't care. So you kind of start where they are.
It's a freezer, right? It's a freezer room, right? When you walk in, it's like it's cold. So yeah, I mean, sales has never been, and the other piece here, Brian, right? Like it's I always tell the rep, right? It's not about telling you that sales has never been easy, right? It's never been. It's one of the most significant pieces of how our business succeeds. It's always a grind, right? It's always that if somebody sets expectations with you, that's good and bad. But it's up to you how to manage or that grind around some of those things, because it really pertains to dealing with human beings, right? At the end of the day, you're dealing with human beings, right? If you come in, how do you want to be treated? You always say that, right? Like that's not what the guy wants to listen. It's actually your work around maximizing those opportunities, those 10 seconds to 30 seconds that they're listening to what really matters to them, right? And that's the grind, that's the work that you put up before even making that initial call. And to your point, all the time, right? They don't know who you're from what. Like those LinkedIn messages, great, but man, there's no reference point. It's like a generic message, Work towards what good looks like before you even react to, hey, that guy, that's a go-to guy. That's the decision maker. Well, getting to that decision maker, you're probably gonna talk a lot about golf, but the guys that are actually gonna tell that decision maker what to decide are the guys that below the guy. So you might be going through the whole thing, right? So,
and how do you get reps to develop themselves and focus on becoming better instead of deflecting it onto the product, the market, the economy, their territory? Because sales is never easy, because as soon as it gets easy, they hire another rep and you get half the territory, right? So it keeps getting a little bit harder all along.
True. To my actually, I kind of alluded to a little bit of developing that culture, right? Developing that culture of not putting people in that exposing those people to the real rough requirements to succeed from a data and numbers perspective, but instead is making them focus on the things that matters, right? To your point, when you're there, when you're coaching them the right way, right? When you're there and setting expectations that they're not alone, providing them with that team concept, providing them with positive energy throughout the whole process. I think that the challenge of most sales reps is getting out of the mindset of having to make money and hit the numbers. If that's constant what in their mind is, then you're not teaching them good, right? You're just teaching them to hit numbers, right?
You're hitting them with the stick.
Yeah, you're hitting them with the stick. Treat people like human beings, right? Like treat people wherein you're getting to know them from a relationship standpoint. And guess what? You're communicating to them where they're hearing you and they're listening to you, because you're not just talking to them like, oh, you're rep 1, rep 2, rep 3, rep 4.
And that's a great point. And a lot of leaders miss it, is that one of our primary needs as mammals is to belong.
Correct.
And when you see bad things happen, it's usually because that person doesn't feel they're part of something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just started talking to Pat Cohen, this Mr. Sales Culture guy, and nobody wakes up, right? He always says this. Nobody wakes up thinking, I don't want to be wrong, right? Everybody wakes up thinking that, you know what, I want to be part of something.
Part of something.
Yes.
That's when it becomes bigger than themselves.
Correct. And now you're going to get real production or real desire to succeed.
And how do you show people that you have their back. Because I sense it. I've known you for 20 minutes now, but I sense it.
Yeah, I think that whole transparency, right? I always tell this to people, right? When this is a recent conversation from someone says like, "Hey, I want to start building relationships. Can you include me in the next trade show?" I'm like, wow, that's a great thing to do because they feel like showing up at the trade show. Now they're going to love building relationships, right? So it starts with that, right? Wherein you're going to have their back because you're actually listening, right? And as I simply say this, right? Like when you're developing relationships with people, even especially with your team, that you really get to know them, right? What's your wife's name? What's your kid's name? His birthday and stuff like that. I always tell them I'm not a big fan of work-life balance. I'm a big fan of just take care of your life. So wherein I anticipate things, right? Wherein sometimes when I can sense that this guy is kind of having a hard time, I just say, "Hey, your anniversary is coming over." They go like, "How do you remember that it's my anniversary?" Take the wife out, right? Get a good dinner and things like that. But most of all, here's the thing. I always tell them, make some noise, right? Challenge, be an owner. And when things happen, that's where you show up and you prove to them that you really got their back, right? When things you're pushing them to excel. The problem I have with some leaders, and I've learned this, is the minute when everything's good, you're there having your back. But when it's something that they do, they make a mistake or say something wrong, suddenly you're out there slapping them in the head. No, that actual effort to get to that mistake is actually something that you want to make sure it's a learning thing. At the same time, you can focus on helping them not look bad with whatever they did and support them through the process. Take a lot of heat for that. Right? I do that a lot, right? When they make a mistake and they said, "Oh my God, I said this," or "I made this deal and legal is telling me I shouldn't," I'm going, "Hey guys, I told him to do so." But then in the back end, I will tell them, "Hey, let's learn from this."
That's brilliant because most leaders do the former, where they're like, they just smack them.
But again, I've learned, right? I've been on the stand and suddenly you look over everybody. You're left on your own.
Right. Or even worse, they just don't tell you or don't try. And that's the bad part because you can't coach what you don't observe and you can't coach somebody who doesn't want it. The ideal situation, they come to you and explain, "Hey, I messed up." You want that. Not them to mess up, but them to tell you.
So, something that I learned early from my friends, my real close friends, and I tell them, "Hey, you can throw me under the bus anytime. Just tell me ahead of the time."
You put the helmet on.
So I know when it's coming, right? So I can prepare myself. So yeah, the things.
And where did you get the mindset? Because a lot of leaders don't have this about trusting the process, focusing on the process, not just the outcome.
Yeah, okay, maybe I'll see the UPS guy again. So no, I think the outcome is important. It's everybody's, but the process has to be, the one that's not going to get you here right away. But ultimately, it's something that if you also pay attention to the process and the wins, then you're going to learn from that and be able to succeed more in the future, right? I think it's not just it's a combination of trusting and celebrating the process, right? I mean, Brian, you know this. I mean, it's what? It's 1 out of 10. It's 2 out of 10. And if you just focus on the 1 out of 10 win, you're wasting the opportunity for those other 8 processes or opportunities that happen. And a lot could be said to empower that person or to learn from those things that might not end up being a win, but my gosh, those are the key nuggets that's going to make you better in the future.
And that's it, because if you don't trust the process and you only look at the outcome, you make a good point that you won't focus on the ones that are marginal. Mm-hmm. But also you'll fall into the customer traps. where they seem real excited and you send a proposal to the wrong person and you put it up on the forecast and the end of the quarter comes and you're like, I'm sure it's coming through procurement any minute now. They go, oh, no, I haven't sent it to my manager yet.
My good friend Kevin Newton always says this, it's Friday. It's happening on Friday. Which Friday is the question, right? That's the thing, right? I think, again, it's hard enough, but I really take the time to focus on making sure that we're learning a lot, right? Every day, right? We're learning, and that helps not only the team but myself, right? To be grounded, to know what they're learning, what they're seeing in the market, and eventually hoping to use that in their toolbox in the next round.
And what's probably the number one thing not to do as a leader that you see a lot of leaders doing that you wish they knew not to do?
Oh my God. The worst thing, Brian, that I see a lot, and I learned this, right, is when they're promising a lot of good things. Wrong expectations. I see this, right? In the sales world, that can only go so far. And specifically is when it ties into thinking that people are motivated by, hey, if you hit these numbers, we're going to take a trip to Japan. I'm like, sets up, what's really more important, right? I think that's just one, man, but over-promising of things that sometimes just muddies the whole thing, right? Like that, because a lot of people interpret that, well, if I don't get this, then I'm on my failure, right? Like, that it's ultimately the added things that we're not even getting there, especially when you're talking about this in Q1 and Q2, that, hey, if we hit the numbers, like, work me through the process first, because it's not, so I think, yeah.
Cool. Hey, this has been a great conversation. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Oh, LinkedIn, right. So I got my LinkedIn page, and I'm actually extremely active. So good networking thing, and that's where I met you too. So